हेलो दोस्तों एंड स्वागत है आपका आज के इस इम्पॉर्टेंट लेक्चर में जहां पे एक बहुत ही ज़रूरी पीवाईक्यू के साथ आप क्विकली एक टॉपिक को रिवाइज कर पाएंगे। नाउ पीवाईक्यूज जो है एक बहुत ही बढ़िया यार्डस्टिक है टू बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड कि आप अपने सिलेबस को कितनी अच्छी तरह से पूरा कर चुके हैं, किस तरह के क्वेश्चंस आएंगे और आप इन्हें कैसे टैकल करें। एंड दैट इज वाई अगर बियॉन्ड दिस भी आप और ज्यादा पीवाईक्यूज बेस्ड प्रैक्टिस करना चाहते हैं अपने मेंस 2024 के लिए विद पीएसआईआर ऑप्शनल, तो हमारा क्रैश कोर्स जो है आपके पास अवेलेबल है। राइट, हमारा ये जो क्रैश कोर्स है इसके अंदर हमने इंश्योर करने की कोशिश की है दैट आपकी एक फास्ट पेस्ड बट डिटेल्ड रिविजन हो सके ऑफ द इंटायर सिलेबस बाय प्रीवियस 10 years के PSIR क्वेश्चंस। राइट, Q&A फॉर्मेट में होगा एंड वेरी इंपॉर्टेंटली लाइव होगा जहां पे मैं आपके साथ बैठ के आपको ये रिवीजन करवाऊंगी। प्लस हर वीकेंड सैटरडे के सैटरडे देयर विल बी अ वीकली इंटरेक्शन प्लस जो वीकली टेस्ट जो है ये भी कंडक्ट कराया जाएगा वेरी इंपॉर्टेंटली। राइट, जिसके अंदर जो है 10 क्वेश्चंस होंगे, 5 PSIR बेस्ड, 5 नए PSIR PYQs बेस्ड और 5 जो है नए क्वेश्चंस। प्लस एक प्राइवेट टेलीग्राम ग्रुप होगा एंड मेंटरशिप विद अ सिलेक्टेड कैंडिडेट ऑफिसर। इसके अलावा अगर आप सिर्फ टेस्ट सीरीज की खोज में है तो वी ऑल्सो हैव अ पीवाईक्यूज बेस्ड टेस्ट सीरीज जहां पे वीकली टेस्ट होंगे, राइट, ऑफ 10 क्वेश्चंस ईच। 5 इसमें से पीवाईक्यूज होंगे, 5 नए क्वेश्चंस होंगे। 2 FLTs of paper 1 and paper 2 PYQs based and 2 FLTs of paper 1 and paper 2 which will be based on new questions, model answers plus video solutions, detailed evaluation and telegram group भी जो है प्रोवाइड किया जाएगा। वेरी इंपॉर्टेंटली हमारे क्रैश कोर्स में भी आप चूज कर सकते हैं अगर आप विद इवैल्यूएशन लेना चाहते हैं या विदाउट इवैल्यूएशन लेना चाहते हैं। विद इवैल्यूएशन मतलब अगर आप अपने आंसर्स को चेक भी कराना चाहते हैं तो इसकी कॉस्ट 8500 रुपीज है एंड विदाउट इवैल्यूएशन इज प्राइस्ड एट रुपीज 6500। वही हमारी टेस्ट सीरीज जो है सिर्फ 5500 में अवेलेबल है। साथ ही में इन दोनों में जो आपका क्रैश कोर्स है इसमें आपको एक्सेस मिलेगा हमारे मंथली करंट अफेयर्स लेक्चर्स का, ताकि आप सारे अपडेट्स जो है उनसे भी वाकिफ हो सके, प्लस वैल्यू एडिशन नोट्स। टेस्ट सीरीज में आपको पीडीएफ्स मिलेंगे ऑफ दीज मंथली करंट अफेयर्स लेक्चर्स टू कीप यू अपडेटेड, राइट, एज वेल एज चीट शीट्स जो कि आप अपने आंसर्स में यूज कर पाए। राइट, with this let's move on to the lecture today and अपनी PSIR ऑप्शनल की तैयारी को और बेहतर बनाते हैं। अब let's move towards the question. Now Machiavelli, now when we compare him at least to Plato and Aristotle, he comes across as a relatively straightforward thinker, right? To put him or to categorize him in any compartment is slightly difficult. A lot of people end up doing that, right? So as we've talked about and as again a lot of students also are saying that for now we've been focusing on the ends and means relationship a lot, right? When we look at Plato, when we look at Aristotle, these Greek thinkers make a natural relationship between ethics and politics. It was central to their thought. So whatever works that you look at for both Plato and Aristotle, you will find ethics to be a mainstay, because for them politics could not be studied in a silo, right? Studying politics in a silo would not lead anywhere towards the ideal state. So ethics had to come in mind. In fact, now imagine, now you have to look at the fact that when you look at Plato or when you look at the kind of ideal state he's imagined, you cannot have a state with a philosopher king being operational without there being an ethical foundation. The entire premise of a philosopher king is based on the fact that this person has ethics rooted in his or her personality, right? This is what makes the philosopher king. Right? Similar is the take by even Aristotle. Even though his state seems more reasonable, but the entire premise of a good state leading to a good life is intrinsically tied to this idea of ethics. Now, however, when we look at Machiavelli, or when we see the rise of Machiavellian politics coming into being, the context has changed. Right? Machiavelli is a thinker who lies on the cusp of modernity. Right? He's, we'll oftentimes we'll look at him, or he'll be called as the buckle or the hook that connects these two different eras, that almost connects these two styles and mindsets of thinking. And this is what adds to the uniqueness of Machiavelli, and this is exactly what adds to the complexity of Machiavelli as well, right? Which is why understanding context, and ये context का जो idea है ना, especially for all the thinkers that we do today, whether it's Hobbes, whether it's Locke, whether we're looking at Machiavelli right now, the context becomes very important, because we'll see how that ends up impacting their entire thought process or the main theories or concepts that they come up with, right? So that is why Machiavelli is truly and definitely regarded as a child of Renaissance, right? Because this was a period where there was so much change happening, right? In the economy, in the society. So in the economy, particularly when we look at Italy, right? Now, Italy, because of its locational advantage, had enjoyed the profits and the benefits of mercantilism. And as it pushed commerce, suddenly economy, the freedom to make these economic decisions, the freedom to enjoy the fruits of these economic decisions without being made to feel guilty, was becoming very important. At the same time, in society and culture also, different things were happening. We were seeing the expansion of reading. We were seeing, very importantly, the expansion, the bursting of local languages, right? Local languages means the country-oriented languages being important. Like English is imagined to be the lingua franca of the world today, these were imagined to be Latin and Greek in the previous times. More importantly, Latin, because that is what the church was espousing. But now, with the coming up of the printing press, these different languages, whether it's English, whether it's German, whether it's Italian, were soon catching ground, right? And because now printing press was coming into being, this means that material now is more accessible, right? That even the ordinary masses can now have access to the same, right? So all of this chain of events thereby was culminating into a new era, and this is the era that Machiavelli was belonging to. Now, in terms of the space also that he was living in. Now, Italy, specifically the Florentine Republic, he understood that how the Italian city-states, because they were so tiny now, again, look at the things, how they are changing. Remember, for Aristotle, when he talks of the ideal state, right, do all these small comparisons also, right? When you shift states, right? Now, ideal state, Plato versus Aristotle, we imagine. Now, imagine from Aristotle, now we move towards Machiavelli, right? Now, here, not just in terms of how the state is conceptualized, the way to attaining such state, the means that you can employ, what kind of functions the state is going to perform, right? On all these benchmarks, though, Machiavelli is very different from Aristotle. But even in terms of the physical imagination of the state, Machiavelli is very different from Aristotle. Now, Aristotle's conception of the ideal state, right? So, imagine apart from the entire moral, ethical, political premise, then he talks about what should be the size of the state also, what should be the ideal population of the state also. And when you look at that, that was mainly the Greek polis, right? So, he's imagining it in the sense of city-states only. Now, that was the kind of condition that existed even for Machiavelli. There were these, Italy wasn't the kind of Italy that we imagine today, right? It was an Italy which was divided into small city republics. Now, Machiavelli ke liye, the opposite is true. He's saying these small city states cannot become powerful. right? They cannot be powerful states which are capable of protecting themselves, which are capable of preserving their national interest, which is why he was a major proponent of Italian unification. And to do the same, he realized that one of the chains which are curtailing this Italian progress and unification is the kind of hindrance that the papal authority ends up playing. Right? The church is limiting Italy, it is limiting Italian progress, it is limiting the potential of Italy. And which is why he wanted to overthrow this yoke of religious authority which came along with the Catholic Church. Right? This was one of the main premises of Machiavelli, which is why I wanted to understand the context and the way now in which he's varying or multiple dimensions from the previous scholars. Now let's look at the question. The question says, critically examine Machiavelli's views on religion and politics. Now this is a 15 marker. Right? Now what happens is you have to problematize this statement, and very importantly, you have to look at the various perspectives that can come out of a simple phrase like religion and politics, right? Something as simple as religion and politics. Now, this is why it has been put. Now, the relationship between religion and politics can lead to multiple aspects, and it is important to look at those also. Now, first and foremost, you have to introduce Machiavelli, right? You have to lay a context. Now, again here, it can be your introduction can be in any manner, right? You can talk about how religion, the relationship between religion and politics is an argument or is a debate which is ages old, right? Not just in Western political thought, but even Indian political thought. Now again, keeping in mind for future also, this is one of the probable introductions that I am giving you, right? Wherein I am placing, because now it is about Machiavelli's views on religion and politics, we are going to introduce the answer by placing him in his unique context and how that unique context led to these views on the relationship between religion and politics, which are very different from the scholars that preceded him. Right? On the other hand, you can actually start off by talking of the relationship between religion and politics too. Right? Let's see in Indian political thought, for example, when you look at the ancient Indian political thought, religion was the main source of ethics. So like say in Greek thought, ethics and politics had a close relationship. So was the case in a number of other ancient political thought canons as well, including the Indian canon, wherein ethics का source क्या था? ये religion था. That is why religion and politics had a very, very complex relationship with one another, right? Similarly, we will see that when we talk of modern thinkers like Gandhi as well, right? For him, again, the source of ethics is what? Religion. And that is what he said. He says you take religion out of politics, politics is going to end up as a very, very corrupt activity, because he felt that within the Indian context, there is no other ethical source which can ground politics, which can guide politics other than the religious notions, other than the religious guidelines that we have available, right? So again, whatever introduction between these that you feel, or there can be a third one also, but again, you have to bear in mind that it should address what is being asked in the question, right? So question क्या बोल रहा है? हमने critically examine करना है Machiavelli के views को on religion and politics. Now, यहाँ पे शब्द क्या है? Critically examine. Right? And when we examine something, we have to lay it open, right? We have to open it up. We have to look at each and every piece of argument that has come within this statement, right? So now what a lot of students will end up doing is that maybe they will just follow one premise of what is religion and politics and keep talking about that, criticize that and move on. No. The more dimensions of this phrase that you're able to add, the deeper level of analysis you are offering. And very importantly, this will be critical because it is a 15 marker. It's not a 10 marker, right? So you have to also understand that the needs of the question might also slightly vary, right? So here you might have to unfold a lot more layers than you would have had to maybe say in a 10 mark, right? Now, in the structure itself, I have sort of given you various yardsticks on which this unfolding of layers can happen. The first and foremost, because Machiavelli is obviously regarded as someone who is a precursor of modern day secularism, right? A differentiation, a setting of boundaries between the public and the private, wherein the religion is relegated to the private, and politics, right? The temporal politics is the mainstay of the state, where the political authority has complete control and the church has nothing to do with it, right? The spiritual authority has nothing to do with it. The spiritual authority is relegated to the private sphere of the people, to their individual emotions, to their individual beliefs, to their individual matters. However, things don't end there, because Machiavelli also understands that while I may want to ensure that political authority calls all the shots as far as the state is concerned, I have to keep in mind the way in which my society is organized. So let's be very shrewd about it. He says not everything is bad about religion. Of course, there are problems with it, especially when he says the kind of fear which has been made a part of Catholicism as it was understood then, right? The man was the shivering, fearful person, right? The person had been reduced to what? He was like, there are certain sentiments which are being inculcated in human beings, in individuals, by means of religion. So they're saying, be God-fearing, be kind, be non-violent, be sympathetic, right? And for Machiavelli, now imagine when he wants unification of Italy, when he's seeing pressures from both sides, a huge kingdom, right, which is lying on one side, and then on the other side you have the papal authority. You obviously want your state to be strong. And by strong, what do we mean? A very, very stereotypical idea of strength, which is military strength, right? Because that was seen as one of the first ways of ensuring that Italy could become powerful, right? Because for him, the acquisition of national interest, again, remember this also for Machiavelli, and this can be something which can be seen common between both Kautilya and Machiavelli, the idea of aggrandizement, right? That the only way forward for any state, for Kautilya, Vijikshu, is expansion. If you don't expand, someone else is going to come and take your place, right? That is why when we look at Mandal theory also, Mandal theory helps you imagine how the state can fulfill its national interest and expand while keeping in mind certain foreign policy dimensions, allies, mechanisms, etc. Right? Similar was the case with even Machiavelli. Now, if it's an expanding state, and an expanding state तो चाहिए तभी unify होगे, तो इसीलिए अब आपको क्या चाहिए? आपको वैलर चाहिए, है ना? वैलर चाहिए. और वैलर कैसे आएगा अगर ये सारी चीजें पढ़ाई जा रही हैं इंडिविजुअल्स को, right? You're breeding weak men according to him, right? These are very, very weak people, so we need to change this way of thinking also, right? Which is being perpetuated by church. That is why he was also very critical of the church. But then he says, yes, of course, religion can be used as a great political tool as well. You know, because masses are emotional fools, but princes are better than that. Rulers are better than that, right? Rulers have the awareness of how they can use religion as a political tool, right? To be able to unite the masses for their causes, right? In fact, हम अभी भी देखते हैं, right? In the present context also, one of the greatest ways of moving masses is what? Religion. राइट रिलीजन के नाम पे आप जनता बहुत आसानी से इकट्ठा कर सकते हैं. एंड अगर आपने किसी के अगेंस्ट भी वेज करना है, अगर आपने किसी को अदर बनाना है, रिलीजन कैन बी अ ग्रेट वे. एंड क्योंकि यूरोप के अंदर a lot of times religion के बेसिस पे states में some form of symmetry थी, right? इंडिया जैसी diversity नहीं थी, तो religion could therefore become a great force for really channeling emotions also within the masses, right? Now imagine when we look at even religious wars, right? So crusades का idea भी क्या है ना? रिलीजन के नाम पे आप किस तरह से फ्लेम कर सकते हो फायर इवन द मिलिट्री इंटेंट ऑफ पीपल एज वेल, राइट? सिमिलरली दिस कुड आल्सो बी यूज्ड एज अ सोशल टूल ऑफ डिसिप्लिनिंग एंड इनकलकेटिंग सिविक वर्च्यू, राइट? तो अगर ये लोगों को शांत बना ही रहा है, ऐसे शांत बनाए कि द ruler is able to instill and maintain political order within his or her state, right? In fact, again, you can make comparisons, always make comparisons, right? You can also look at the way in which Buddhism was used technically by Ashoka the Great, right? So we talk about the kind of change that the Kalinga war brought within him, right? He understood the meaning of Dhamma, how Buddhism impacted him, right? How he now gave up violence, etc. But this didn't mean he let Kalinga go and went like, acha, now aap jao yaar, I have realized, aap apna kingdom khud run karo. Of course not, right? Now he had expanded his kingdom to what he thought was the maximum possible extent. There were other kingdoms which were paying him tribute, which were basically had been reduced as vassals. Now, how do you consolidate that? Right? You add this element of एक तरह की hegemony है, right? एक तरह की hegemony by use of religion, right? And उसके बेसिस पे आपने अब लोगों को सिखा दिया आपका धम्मा क्या होना चाहिए, रॉक के edicts पे, पिलर्स पे अपने बच्चों को भेज दिया डिफरेंट कंट्रीज में कि सिखाओ कैसे आपने अपनी जीवन जीना है. It makes life much more easier for him. Why should I have had to use violence when I can make you consent to my rule, right? So again, right, again, when even though Machiavelli may not be talking about it, but it's such a great example of how hegemony is being built to keep the ruling class in power, right? So again, you can make these connections, which is what exactly now Gramsci would come across as such a different thinker. But imagine Gramsci picking up Machiavelli and reading his Prince, reading his discourses on Livy, reading all these works and understanding, oh my God, this is how ruling class persists their power. This is what Marx was missing out on, right? So these are certain things that you can actually build on and connect, right? So then obviously religion was very important here also. Right? So these are various layers and aspects that you can uncover. Then obviously there was a separation of ethics and politics, wherein politics had its own dimensions, had its own laws of governance. There was the art of statecraft which had to be explored, and the moral rules and regulations which were followed in religion had nothing to do with it, right? And again, you can make interlinkages, interconnections, right? Now, Machiavelli is also seen as a precursor of what we understand as classical realism in international relations also, right? So theories by classical realists such as Hans Morgenthau, right? One of the various Hans Morgenthau जो उनके principles of realism देते हैं based on an inside out theory, right? Inside out theory. ये छोटे terms ना, and keywords are very important. Even Machiavelli's ideas are inside out, right? A lot of people's ideas are inside out. Hobbes is also inside out. Locke is also inside out. Why? Because we're starting from the starting point is what? What constitutes the state? What constitutes the state? We the people, right? So that is why the starting point is going to be human beings, our behavior, right? So अगर हम ही इतने गंदे हैं, हमारा behavior ही ऐसा है, we are people who are prone to greed and selfishness and power hungry and fear, then obviously the kind of society and the state that we occupy, its leanings and tilts are also going to be similar, right? It is also going to behave and operate in a similar manner, right? So this similar idea is therefore propagated even in international relations in classical realism, right? Wherein we also understand that now how politics, for the well-being of politics, we need statecraft. And this statecraft should be completely separate from the kind of moral rules and regulations that we categorize with or attach with in the rest of the dimensions of our life. So all of these interlinkages across paper can be made by you, right? Then obviously we will move towards critical analysis. There's plenty, right? Why he has been criticized, but we can't end it there, right? What is the enduring importance of his ideas? So there we can relate it to modern ongoing examples. Yes, we can relate it to India's foreign policy as well. We can relate him to the American foreign policy as well, right? Lots of these things in the concluding element, so that we understand why these ideas are so important that we continue to look at them in UPSC syllabus till date. Right? Now, very quickly, let's look at the answer. Major aspects I've already discussed. Right? So now again, as I've said, we will start off, or you may start with discussing problematizing the relationship between religion and politics. But here we've talked about how he was the child of Renaissance. And in fact, Lasky argues that the entire spirit, the entire essence of Renaissance and the new kind of ideas which were bubbling up during this period, the new kinds of ideas about state, how state should be run, how statecraft can be imagined, right? And how it has to be different from religious precepts, can all be found within the works of Machiavelli. Now, in this idea of religion and politics, he was one of the first people who actually talks of secularization of thought, right? Of thought in life. Right? Now, he says that, listen, there has to be a boundary between the state and the religion. And while religion is important, you have to understand it is one of the things that comes within the realm of the state. It is not above the state, which means, therefore, right, this is a very important statement, that religion is within the state and not above it, which means that who calls the shots? It is the political authority which calls the shots, not the religious authority, right? However, he says, yes, there can be certain elements of religion which can be important as well, right? He says there is problems with Christianity. I absolutely understand it, right? So again, you can look at it, right? So he says it's made men effeminate, right? So again, you have to read him in his context. Today, obviously, this will come across as exceedingly misogynist, but these were his views, right? That you've made men weak, right? You're glorifying qualities which actually do not make them understand the real world needs, what their state needs for now, but you've made them focus on otherworldly needs of entering heaven, of ensuring humility, of being kind, of being patient, which isn't something which is going to make our state strong or help us in waging this war so that we can be a unified, powerful force. He said, fine, these are certain problems, but at least I can use it to instill fear and respect for authority. And particularly the laws which are now being made, I can use these very precepts of Christianity to make people abide by these laws. That is why the relationship between Machiavelli and religion is seen as, another very important keyword, is seen as being utilitarian. Therefore, religion was useful. Why was it useful? Because it could help Machiavelli reach certain ends. And what was that? What were those ends? A powerful, consolidated state. Right? So use this keyword as well. Right? Exceedingly, he had a very utilitarian perspective towards religion. Right? Now, for the health and the prosperity of the state, to lead a civic life, for a disciplined society, for people to inculcate this discipline and civic virtue within themselves, religion could therefore be used as a political tool very, very well. And again, Machiavelli, when you look at him, he's a person who bases his entire studies on observation, right? He's someone who uses history very critically, right? So for him, we aren't reading history just for the sake of reading history. He is saying that you can derive the best of lessons from history and in fact devise ways and methods in a manner that helps you secure your interests. Because history is what? History is helping you understand human behavior. And fundamentally human behavior is not going to change. Right? हम ऐसे ही रहे हैं, हम ऐसे ही रहेंगे. तो इसीलिए learn from history how people tend to behave so that you don't end up making those mistakes yet again. So again, what does he do? Machiavelli looks at religion and how it was used by the Roman Republic, by the Roman Empire. And that is why he is more impacted by the Roman Empire than the Greek thought. Why? Because he says, look at the extent of the Roman Empire, right? The kind of kingdom that they had built, the kind of empire that they had built, right? Greeks weren't able to do that, Romans were, right? And that is why he looks at the way in which religion is used by Machiavelli in instilling discipline and communal values amongst the people. And again, the same example as I have given beforehand of Ashoka the Great, of how the same has been used. Now, another modern day contemporary relationship that you can draw out here is as a foreign policy tool, right? That religion is a tool. Have a utilitarian approach towards religion. So religion is not just being used to, gather fame and gather some form of, a good authority and respect from your masses within the religion. But look at the way in which religion is also used as a tool of foreign policy, of bridging gaps with other countries, and an effective use of soft power. Right? So again, look at India using various aspects of religion. Right? So Buddhism as a great way through which India has cemented ties, be it with Sri Lanka, be it with Japan, even with Nepal, with the building of the various religious tourism circuits. Buddhism has provided that mechanism, right? Similarly, even Hinduism. So, our prime minister going and visiting the temples there, again, this is what? Using religion in a manner which ensures foreign policy gains, right? So, look at the way in which the world is changing today and how you can look at it in the present circumstances as well and make Machiavelli's thought relevant in the present world, right? So these are certain lenses that I'm giving you. Various more examples can be attached, but now you have a lens through which you can look at it and problematize whatever Machiavelli is saying, right? So this is the manner in which he progressed about as far as religion and politics were concerned. However, obviously, there was huge, he was also criticized in a massive manner. Why was he criticized? He says, now look at religion, right? Religion is something which is age old. Some people might even say that, listen, religion is possibly older than even state. Why? Because again, man is a social animal. Different kinds of things bring people together. And religion is one of those things, right? So religion, when you reduce it to a tool, you might think you're using it in a great manner, but you forget the kind of emotional attachment that masses can have towards religion. Again, another thing that you can add, how far can the prince control this wave of religion? Right? We might think we have it under control, but sometimes we might end up creating a Frankenstein monster, after which we do not know how to control it, right? So while in the beginning we might be using religion as a political tool, as a social tool, but sometimes it can lead to problems. Sometimes because there is so much emotion attached to religion that it can lead to riots, it can lead to hate, it can lead to warmongering, right? It can lead to problems of communal violence, right? All of these are things related to religion because you cannot simply reduce religion to being a tool. Furthermore, for Machiavelli, God and religion was something associated only with those who were, weak-minded. People who do not have capacity for rationality, people who do not have capacity for logic, only those are the people who will associate themselves with religion. But that isn't true. Right? Some of the most enlightened beings in our history have been those people who have understood the importance of religion as well as politics. In fact, even when we look at Kautilya, right? Often Kautilya is imagined, even though he predates Machiavelli, he's looked at as the Indian version of Machiavelli. But even in Kautilya, he understood the importance of religion. He understood the importance, right? So again, dharma was much more than religion. It was a way of life. It was the way in which you imagined a dutiful, responsible, moral way of life. So this moral way of life was very important, right? And very importantly, this wasn't just limited to the masses. It was also a guiding force for whom? for the ruler as well. And when you now give a free hand to the prince or to the ruler that you use religion however you want, right? The ruler should participate in religious festivals, but should understand that this is all a farce. Which means what? That actually the ruler does not have any sort of association or is not imbibing any morals or values which are being taught within the religious premise. Now this is again problematic. Right? These are the things which is going to give rise to populism. This is what is going to give rise to even tyranny and absolutism, because now the ruler knows how to arm twist masses using religion and use it in a manner that makes him powerful, often at the cost of masses themselves. Right? So this was also again one problem associated with Machiavelli's way of thinking. Then again, Machiavelli has also been very, very importantly the most usual criticism that he's a preacher of immorality. That this dual morality which is being offered by Machiavelli is evil in nature, right? It is evil in nature. It is giving importance only to ends, only to outcome, and the means which are followed are not given any importance whatsoever. And often, as we say, if your means are problematic, the ends are going to have their own issues and problems as well. And this was completely different from the Greek thinkers that had predated him, and even certain modern thinkers for whom ethics went hand in hand with politics. So we've already talked about Gandhiji. You can add his example as well of how he would end up criticizing or looking at the Machiavellian way of thinking of thought. However, despite all of this criticism, we have to understand that what the kind of view that Machiavelli presents was very unique. And it is very critical because it came at a juncture in time which, through this disassociation of politics from religion, made modern political thought and thinking possible. Right? It freed the sphere of politics, the way it was thought of, the way it was conceptualized, from the rigors and chains of spiritual authority and religion, which is now why a number of modern thinkers could come up and present their novel ideas, right? So all of it can go back to, all of it can be as a gratitude to the kind of break that Machiavelli provides from his thought, right? So you can associate this, that he becomes the precursor of what was to come, of also modern age in one way, right? Modern age, at least in political science, in one way, has a lot to be thankful for as far as Machiavelli is concerned, right?